Hi, everybody. My name is Aikim. I look after Google Play business development for apps and games. I'm based in Tel Aviv. And I look after our business in Middle East and Africa. Here today, we have an exciting panel of really cool panelists from game companies that have all had significant launches in the last year or so. And we wanted to pick the brain a little bit and learn from your experiences over the last year on how you really took risk off your game launches and improved its initial performance by really developing at scale and then launching once you're ready and finding that right balance between a good launch strategy, a good production cycle. We figured that developing and launching games today is becoming an increasingly expensive proposition. Development costs have been skyrocketing. You need to launch with a good storyline, with proven mechanics, with amazing graphics. And at the same time, you need to appeal to an audience with a shortening attention span, increased acquisition cost, and a real high expectations for high-quality games. So all in all, it's becoming much more tricky to launch a hit and to launch a success up front. And there is a couple of tools and learnings you can really leverage to understand early where your strengths lie and where to best process with the game in order to ensure the best possible success once you're actually ready for a global production launch. So I'd love to invite our 4 distinguished panelists from really cool game companies making a diverse range of really awesome and highly addictive games. And please join me on stage, George Abramovici from King, Jens Begemann, CEO, Wooga, Saad Choudri, Chief Commercial Officer at Miniclip, and Sergei Zaitsev, Business Development Director at Playrix. Thanks,
We're under
guys.
our photos, by the way. So we're under our photos, so we make it easier.
All right, you can guess which one is which. Awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for joining. Really excited to have you on stage. Just an FYI, I have a couple of questions prepared, but please don't hesitate. We have a couple of minutes at the end. If there's any audience questions, just feel free to shout out or raise your hand. We'll try to accommodate as many as we can. And we'll have a break later on, during which you can pick these gentlemen's brain as well. Sorry, guys, if I've kind of scheduled your breaks now already. Awesome. Sergei, let's start with you all the way to the end. How are you doing? All good?
All good, all good. Thank you for hosting us here.
Well, thanks.
We got a lot to tell you.
You've had a massive hit last year with Gardenscapes and had now create a pretty cool follow-on hit, which seems to be breaking the banks and reaching quite a lot of audiences with Homescapes. So I wanted to ask very specifically, how and when did you make that decision to move over and to fork off some of your team's resources to start developing a new title? And how did you split the resources between continuing to develop for Gardenscapes while also developing Homescapes?
Thank you for the question. So Playrix has a long history, and it was very successful in PC downloadable games. And we had Gardenscapes and the spin-off, which was around renovating the house. It was called Mansion Makeover. So the spin-off in PC downloadable world was even more successful than the story about the garden. So it was pretty logical for us to continue the story and build a game around. When we saw the success of Gardenscapes, it was very logical for us to build a game around renovating a house. So we were pretty sure the concept will work, so that's why we made the decision. And talking about resources, the interesting thing that we didn't move anyone from Gardenscapes to Homescapes, and we collected the team behind Homescapes from scratch. So we were developing the game for 1.5 years, and initially it was 10 people just from scratch, and then the team rapidly grew to more than 60 people, and right now it's growing even more. So yeah, so we didn't move any resources, and we just seek for top talent, and we have the knowledge, and we had very good experience with Gardenscapes, and when we were making Homescapes, we tried to make a game which is not kind of a sequel, but we wanted to create a game which is interesting to play in parallel with Gardenscapes. So we wanted to change some mechanics, but we wanted to stay in the same universe. We wanted to expand the franchise. So yeah.
So essentially, you haven't really moved anybody from one title to the other in terms of resourcing. You really have kind of staffed an entirely new team?
Yes, sure. Of course, there was a lot of sharing knowledge from Gardenscapes team with Homescapes team, but in terms of resources, we didn't move like artists, game designers, and all other guys.
Really cool. Are these two teams competing now, internally as well?
I would call it like cooperation.
Yeah. It's fair. Saad, I just wanted to bring this up in terms of retention. We've discussed earlier before that retention seems to be becoming more and more important as a true KPI of business success. And with 8-Ball Pool, you really have created a title that retains for quite some time. So I wanted to ask a bit about the secret sauce behind it and kind of what you can share, obviously, in this forum that we can learn from on creating such a title that retains for such a long time.
Yeah, we won't be sharing the ingredients, Ike, the sauce. No, yeah, I mean, 8-Ball Pool has been going for 5 years now, over 5 years it's been out on the mobile, and it lived on the web as well. So much like Playrix, we started our life on the web and, you know, so it's very easy for us to understand that there would be a player reaction towards this game. So what we've seen in terms of retention is, you know, 8-Ball Pool has become pretty much almost a utility for a lot of people. You know, it's a way for people to play a competitive game on mobile. And, you know, sometimes the traditional retention for us is, I mean, we obviously focus on that, but it's not something that we are 100% always going to be worried about too much, because actually the way that our audience works is maybe they go away for 2 months and they haven't played the game, but then eventually they'll come back again and then fall back into a pattern of playing for like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah. So, just a second, can everybody hear us okay? Because I noticed there was some... No, okay, got it.
It was genius stuff, guys. It was genius stuff.
You just gave away
I'm telling you, you would have added like 5 points on your D30 retention. It's unfortunate. For the front row.
Yeah, I can confirm. Best I ever got.
Very cool. So we'll try to kind of reiterate some of the points that were kind of lost in translation here. But perfect. Maybe you
like the photo. Like the photo.
Maybe you would like to reiterate.
So just Saad or?
Yes.
No, Saad, just to repeat, just the highlight.
Yeah, so basically just to repeat from a high-level perspective, you know, we look at retention, but obviously, you know, 8-Ball Pool living so long on many people's devices, you know, the way we re-engage players and, you know, really, we feel like it's more of a utility now for people. You know, they come back and they play this, even if they may have lapsed for 2 or 3 months, they will come back and then play for a, you know, kind of the regular session kind of lengths that we would expect to see when they first started. So we really spend a lot of time on that aspect of our launch strategy and our, you know, relaunching games sometimes as well.
Running 8-Ball as a utility.
Everybody plays pool, right?
I know I do. I can't judge from everybody else, but I'm hooked, and I have been for quite some time. So it's yeah, pretty tricky to get off. Jens, you've just launched June's Journey with a really massive launch. And congratulations on this, first of all.
Thank you. Yeah.
It looks really amazing. And when we talked, you mentioned that you kind of created a really long production cycle with a pretty long roadmap of content updates, live ops, and activities that you're doing in order to reduce the original risk at launch. So I wanted to ask a little bit about that.
Yeah. So June's Journey is our latest hidden object game. It came out 2 weeks ago. And there was really 2 phases during the soft launch. The first phase was, okay, does this have the retention metrics that we need to have a successful game long term? That was something we looked at between January and April. And because we had a previous hidden object game before that was a big success, we could compare apples to apples, and we saw very early, okay, this will work, right? Retention is good. But then we had another 6 months period from April to October where it was really about de-risking the launch because live operations and content are so critical. So it's our highest production value game ever.
Yeah.
It's our biggest content effort game ever. It's pretty ridiculous. So we release a new chapter every single week, every Friday. And every chapter is 1,600 man-hours of work. So every Friday, there's basically a chapter that would take 40 people or 40 hours a week to produce, every single Friday. And with people internally, with outsourcing, and that's, I mean, it's ridiculous, but we think it will work. The first 2 weeks of data indicate that this will work. Our previous hidden object game indicates that that will work. And we really needed the preparation time, because we have an author team, like a writing team of 3 authors. They write about a year in advance. So they are currently writing the story that will appear in the game in 1 year, next October. There's graphic production in between, etc. So what we really did is we went to the UK and we did something we call dress rehearsal. So we pretended we were live. So we had weekly content releases. We had our weekly reviews on marketing spend. We did social media, customer care. We did everything as if we were live globally, just limited to the UK across all platforms. And we didn't do that to evaluate if the game would work from a retention perspective. We had already done that before, but to practice if we could run live operations, if we could run content production, if we could run localization and all of those things. Yeah. And yeah, that was really, really key. But it's a huge bet. It seems to pay off, but I had some sleepless nights.
I can only imagine. So at what stage then, during that dress rehearsal, did you make that go or no-go decision? Was that like a set threshold that you have set up front, or was it mostly a...
Yeah, we already made the we will launch decision in April. Yeah. And in April, we said we will launch on October 5th. So half a year in advance, we set a specific launch date, and we worked backwards from that. And we would have only diverted from this if we would have seen something unexpected. So we really used that half year to see, is there something unexpected coming? And to have those dozens of people who are involved to basically prepare them and train them and get them into the rhythm of what it means to run a game with live operations and content. Because that's, I mean, the 5 years after launch are so much more important now than the 2 years before. Yeah. And that's what we basically prepared for in the last half year.
Nice, and you optimized during that period for long-term retention?
We optimized for long-term retention. So, I mean, one sentence I say is, okay, you will lose a certain amount of people during your first week. They may not like the theme, they may not like the genre, but those who are still with you after a week, you really want to keep in the long run. You really still want to have them after a year. That was the mindset on content production. And
so from day 7 to day 28 retention, you expect a minimal drop-off in order to justify
it? And actually, with our hidden object games, we've now changed our reporting system to measure day 720 retention, because these games are really about...
Day 720?
Yes, yeah, 2-year retention. So we measure 2-year retention for cohorts, because long-term retention is everything for these games.
That's a good segue, actually, to move on to George. Yep. You've been running hit games also for the last couple of years, with King running the now very famous Candy Crush saga and the entire franchise. So I'd figure you'd also optimize for the long-term retention. Oh, yeah. And I'm wondering how you guys make the decision between launching a new franchise to launching a content update on one of your existing titles.
Okay, and basically we had to rethink a bit this strategy around 3 years ago when we realized that Candy Crush is here to stay for a long time. And we decided to go 2 parallel tracks. One is keep working on Candy Crush and improve the game and keep it fresh, with adding new live ops, adding big extensions, new content every second week. And then we also say, okay, we need to also do something else, right? So we kind of follow these 2 tracks. Investing in existing games and also working on launching new ones, like can be sister titles or can be sequels to the original one, but also new IPs as well.
And when you do launch a sequel, do you prefer, essentially, are you taking existing game teams or existing staff from the game teams in order to develop that sequel? Or like Sergei mentioned, where you actually hired a completely separate team to continue that?
Yeah, it's a mix. We also, I mean, we need to use the expertise from the people that worked on previous games. Some of them already know how to build certain stuff, right? Yeah. And yeah, they are needed in the new team, but we also have new teams as well. So.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's working clearly thus far, so it's definitely something we can learn from. Back to you, Jens, actually, I wanted to ask specifically about kind of the inverse of June's journey, of what we just discussed, of an experience you've had as developing a game with a relatively long schedule and production cycle, where you ended up with a decision of saying, this is not worth it, we should actually roll back and change and move the resources to something else, kind of, like deciding to kill or roll back.
We question our productions all the time, and we actually stop games at different stages. So just a couple of days ago, we stopped a project that was already full scale into production, over 20 people team, but it was still over a year away from launch, and we saw too many risks. And in the end decided, okay, we stopped this because of not everything was shaping up to give a very clear picture of this will be awesome, because just good is not enough anymore, right? On this market, you have to be one of the best, or maybe the best in your genre to have a chance. So that was really based on early stage, relatively early stage, and based on play tests and subjective evaluation. But we also stopped a project in May that was in soft launch based on retention metrics. So day 1, day 3 retention was good, but then day 7, the drop-off of retention was too strong, and we just stopped that in relatively early stages of soft launch.
So those were 2 separate cycles, if you will, one a subjective playtest?
Yeah, one very subjective playtest over a year away from launch, and the second one was after a couple of months of soft launch based on metrics.
So even after the subjective measure that we figured out it might not, hold up to quality, you still went on to quant.
This market is super tough, right? I don't meet any developer who says, oh, it's easy, right? I never meet them. So it's super, super tough. You have to be one of the best. Yeah. And therefore the bar is crazy high, and you have to be quite ruthless. Yeah. And only if you're completely convinced that this will be great, you should continue. And if it's, oh, this is pretty good, that's not enough. That's not acceptable.
Can I ask a question? Because you guys, it's probably more relevant for the room, but everyone talks about the retention metrics. What is your bar? You said you guys set a bar. What's your bar? Above the 40, 2010, like what are you guys looking at?
So what we do is we look at days played. So for every install, how many days on average does a person play over the year, over the next year? And that number can be high because long-term retention is amazing, or that number can be high because everybody plays for the first few weeks and then drops off. And there, something in the ballpark of days played of 30 to 40 is good, right? So you have 100 installs, and then on average they play 30 or 40 days during the year. But obviously monetization is also important.
That's 30 to 40 sessions.
No.
30 to 40 like separate days that they will play.
Separate days, and obviously, out of those 100 installs, most of them play 1, right? Right, because if you have 50% day 1 retention, right, that's already cutting it. So, that's the way we look at it now, because we think numbers like, hey, day 30 retention needs to be above 15%, or day 30 retention needs to be 20%. It's just one number. It's just one number. We look at the whole.
You use the amount of days that people play to figure out your LTV calculation. Right, okay. I think a lot of people are moving towards that.
We make LTV predictions, basically.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think that's what I hope many people are doing that.
Yeah. No, you have to predict LTV during soft launch and see where it ends up.
That actually brings up a really good point. Saad, specifically to you and your recent launch of War Wings. I've just got a little bit surprised there that we're almost running out of time. But just to quickly talk about the War Wings launch, because you really have done something different from your recent launches.
Yeah, so we went a little bit outside of our what people perceive as our traditional comfort zone, where we really launched a fully 3D dogfighting game, and we kind of like Jens has talked about the dress rehearsal in one territory. So we'd already done the soft launch, and then we essentially focused on doing a full, almost global launch-esque kind of campaign in one territory. So we did that in the UK. So we did, your full UA that you would do. We did TV. We did cinema. We did a lot of things. We worked with the platforms who supported us on this endeavor to try and see what that would do. And that really gave us, because soft launch can give you a false sense of security sometimes.
Yes.
I think a lot of people and a lot of product managers and a lot of UA teams will almost do too well in soft launch because they'll have targeted the users that they really want and the metrics start looking good, and then so you wonder why they haven't scaled when you go into global. And they'll be like, oh, you know, you get, it's the featuring, you know, you get loads of these casual audiences, guys. I know you guys hear it. We might as well talk about it. So why we did that is just to really get a good sense of what that would do on a global stage. And it's proven to be successful because it kind of then replicated onto the global launch when we pushed it out live.
Would that work for Homescape, or would that have been a good strategy for Homescapes as well, like doubling down on one country and going all in? Or do you rather go for a global launch and then really see down the line where you need to focus?
It's a good question. We think that the definition for soft launch should be different dependent on the context. So if you go to the very competitive, crowded space like Match 3 genre, then you should release on the soft launch a very highly polished product, which is pretty ready for the commercial launch. Because if you are missing any of the features that other competitors have in the market, then you just will not make it. You will not make it. And on the soft launch, we don't like test any mechanics or concepts. We already sure that the game is in good shape. But what we are testing is retentions, monetization, technical side of that nothing crashes, and we also test like the difficulty curve with which is like genre peculiarity. So yeah, and we soft launch in Canada usually and Australia, and we believe that these metrics are pretty reliable for the commercial launch. So yeah, the period for which we soft launch, it depends on the game. And for Gardenscapes, we soft launched it for several months. And Homescapes, we kept it in soft launch for 1 month. And yeah, so
cool.
We can rely on these numbers.
Well, it clearly worked. I mean, all of you guys have been really successful in launching these games this year. So we've taken a lot of learnings from you guys and really want to share as much as we can. I'm really afraid that we're running out of time, and I think I have to cut this short, although I think I could stay here for the entire afternoon. Do we have time for questions still? OK, cool. So if somebody here in the audience has questions, please raise your hand now. It's a good time. We have a couple more minutes. OK, right here.
Hello. Hi. It's a question for Jens and Saad as well. You both mentioned you did a soft launch, well, a real global launch in the UK.
Yeah, we called it dress rehearsal.
Cool. So, what did you learn
I
from?
told you it needs a better name.
Yeah, what did you call it?
I said, I don't know, soft global launch.
Soft global launch is not better than dress rehearsal.
I don't know. Somebody in this room will come up with a better.
Sorry, we interrupted you.
I was just curious of what learnings did you get from that? Because you said so you did the rehearsal and then you proceeded with it. Saad, you did all your campaigns, but did you learn anything from it? Did that affect the way you ran the global launch after that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why you do it, right? So I think some of the channels in which we had spent some marketing dollars, we scaled that back. Other ones we put more into it because, you know, for us it was a new type of genre for us to enter into. So we just really wanted to make sure that, you know, one, did our own kind of network respond to that kind of game? What kind of UA channels, you know, does brand marketing campaigns work for this? And that's what we got from that. And you know, we took that data back and then rearranged what we did for global launch. Yep. And we wouldn't have got that had we not done that kind of process.
Yeah. So I agree to what you said. For us, it was also, in addition to this, because it was our next big hidden object game, and we've got an extremely loyal fan base, we would knew our best users, our VIPs from our previous hidden object game would play June's Journey on day one. They need to have a great experience, and therefore things like this weekly content production, which is crazy, every Friday releasing a new chapter, we wanted to have practice in that, and we wanted to have practice in a real market with real users and with real customer care and with real social media interaction and with real weekly pressure basically on the team to, yes, this has to be out to see if it really, really works, or if we would break everything when we go global. So that, in addition to what you said on the marketing side, was important to us.
Yeah, and the other thing we learned was, we launched a game which is probably sacrilege to say in here, but the initial binary download was 1.6 gigabytes. So we needed to make sure that we could do that globally, and in the UK it worked. So that was a big thing for us to test as well.
Nice. We have time for one more quick question. First come, first serve. All right, so let me summarize with one quick question of my own, the last one. Just a flash question. If there's one thing that you would want this room to take away, like what's the one KPI or the one tool that the audience needs to, or should be considering when launching a new title? What's that key KPI you're looking at, George?
For us, it always has been and always will be engagement, and as well as retention, right? So understand why players play your game, why players don't like your game, and that's key to further grow your game as well, right? You need to know exactly what are the pain points and fix them as soon as possible. And very important for launch, I would say, it's have enough content for the most engaged players, like you were saying as well. I mean, don't underestimate that, and just make sure that there's enough content for the most engaged players out there.
Right.
They can be very vocal afterwards if they run out of it. So. Yeah,
you don't want to get your highest value gamers getting disappointed very quickly on from having finished the game early.
Absolutely.
Totally get it. And I've been affected myself also sometimes of having reached the end of the game. Too quickly. Yeah. Jens?
In addition to what you said, George, on retention during soft launch, I think it's really when you're super early stage and you're doing your play testing, see excitement. If you don't see excitement among your team, among people who play it, very bad sign.
That's a good cue. Saad?
Yeah, so for us, long-term retention is probably the most important thing for us to look at, and for I suppose most people. I think the one issue that I think we discussed this in this industry is funny because 15% D30s, that would be very good, right? Or 10% D30 would be good, but that's kind of crazy if you think about it. Your game started with 100 users and now you got 10 at the end. As an industry and as game makers and as content developers, we're going to need to improve that, I think, in the future. That's going to be very difficult to kind of have viable businesses if we keep going down that route.
I agree. Sergei?
If it was only one advice, I'd suggest to focus a lot, focus a lot on the product and focus only on critical things. Like when you soft launch a game, there should be only a small list of most critical things that you should focus on. You should ruthlessly drop everything not important and focus only on important things. What's important is always dependent on the game, on the context. Like if you have a game about with amazing graphics, and the graphics is the most important feature, so you should make sure that this is core, and you should polish it a lot, and you should care less about leagues or clans for a game. But if it's a PvP game, then you should make sure that PvP is pretty polished and graphics is less important, and and this is Playrix way. We focus a lot. We don't do many games, and for us it yields good results. So I advise you to try it too, maybe.
So content, focus, retention. That's essentially like the key summary points that I'm getting out of here. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming up on stage and for agreeing to share with the wider team. I invite you all to come and find our panelists afterwards at the break if you want to pick their brain and get some more specific advice. And I wish you a very successful and valuable rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Okay.